Friends, hello and welcome back. So what a season it was for the Florida Panthers. The Florida Panthers, who, believe it or not, really didn't finish the season better than the Calgary Flames did from a point perspective. The Calgary Flames would end up missing playoffs by 2 points. The Panthers Eastern Conference would make playoffs by just 1 point. But it made all the difference as the Florida Panthers would go in as heavy dogs against the Boston Bruins, take care of the Bruins, and make it to the Stanley Cup Finals. At the time, you said who won the trade? Up for debate. You got to the playoffs, you realize, hey, look, okay, having a guy like Tkachuk is a game changer in playoffs. He can score, he can play defensively, he plays that physical style of hockey you want in the playoffs. And here we are questioning now, who did win this trade? Right now, again, Jonathan Huberdeau, he's 30 years young. You bring in Uyghur, who's a young defenseman, not really young, he's only 29, but I thought that was a solid defenseman Calgary picked up. Meanwhile, you send Tkachuk over, who just adds a completely different style of play to this Florida Panthers team, and he's going to add that style of play for a long time because he's 24 years young. So let's take a look back. Let's say, what if this trade never happened? What if the Florida Panthers did not trade for Matthew Tkachuk this season? How does this team look? Hopefully, it looks good enough for the batteries don't die before then. But right now, Matthew Tkachuk in this game is a franchise medium. You don't see that very often. A 93 overall. They gave this guy a whole lot of respect. The trade value is there. According to EA, that to Tkachuk, they wouldn't. They said, "Now we ain't taking Uyghur, Huberdeau in a first, not for Matthew Tkachuk. It is not worth it." And if that is the case, you say, all right, Florida, good deal in there. You picked them up. You won the trade. Calgary not looking so hot. We're going to see what happens if we send them back. It's kind of interesting to look and see, like, hey, at the end of the day, like we said, they made these trades and both teams were pretty much equals. Obviously, they was different type of teams. Don't get me wrong there. They played different styles of hockey. They're different teams. The goaltending, a big part of Florida was that Bob got hot late in the season. But from a on-paper standpoint, those two teams made a trade. It was even, but when you look at the production you got out of these two players, I think it's it's far and away. It's like, yeah, you got to take Tkachuk, right? You got to. I mean, you got the defensive player and you got Huberdeau, but he just not doing what Tkachuk did. They got the first round draft pick still yet to come. We'll see how that turns out. I mean, Florida could fall to pieces, and all of a sudden you talk a little bit more about that draft pick being a little bit more impressive, and again the trade starts to look better. It was one season, but when you're as young as Tkachuk and this guy's potential, his abilities, I mean, you almost feel like he does feel like a game changer for this team. Right now, though, no Tkachuk. Florida brings back a little extra on the defensive end. They bring up a playmaker on the offensive side of the puck, and Florida's killing it. I would say, from a sim engine standpoint, I would think Florida getting the two players back they did makes a bigger impact. Because they brought it up, Huberdeau can be a point per game player. Huberdeau can put them points up. Bring in an extra defensive player like Uyghur that adds some stability back there. I don't think, again, this is a video game. You can't get that, we got the physicality, the mindset, that kind of tone that's set in the playoffs. I don't think that reflects in this game like it does in real life. But in real life, again, it's so important. And we see it with a lot of these teams, like Edmonton, like you got to have these physical style players. You got to have those gritty players. You got to have a tough bottom six. You got to have, or the goaltender gets hot, or it's like you get pushed around and get bullied. And again, Matthew Tkachuk brought that kind of thing to the ice. And it's not even just that. It's like, again, you get under the other team's skin. There's a lot of players in the league where you go into a series, especially a rivalry, where you're like, man, I cannot stand this guy in the other team. And a lot of it's got to do with the way he plays on the ice. But if that player's on your team, Tom Wilson's probably a great example. Chris Kreider, good example. Tkachuk's probably a good example. It's like, those guys are on your team, though. You love it. You love every single bit of it. Is it getting under the skin of your opponents? Is it causing problems out there? Is it getting these guys a little flustered where they're not playing their best? Meanwhile, potentially rattle them a little bit? Yeah, that's a big deal. Stand up for your teammates. You just feel like, again, it changes the feel of the game where you're not that team getting bounced around, pushed around out there. It feels like you're the aggressor. You're the one doing that. It just changes the momentum in every which way possible. The Panthers are right now a very solid team, looking to finish second place in the Atlantic, and they're going to clinch early in April as well. They're going to play the Tampa Bay Lightning in the first round. Obviously a tough draw, but they're going to win game one against Tampa. We're going to take a look and see how these two teams played out with that trade not happening. Now, Reinhart would lead Florida in points. So, again, Huberdeau, 72 points, not good. I mean, 72 points is good, don't get me wrong. But he was like, we'd like this guy to lead the team in points, you're going to drop him. But Uyghur at 56. I mean, that is good. That's important. if you're the Florida Panthers looking at that. Okay, how about you, Bobrovsky? Oh, 915, not bad. Bob played well. Bob played more than well, really. I mean, good for Bob. As far as Calgary is concerned, how'd the Calgary production look over here? Goaltender 2.89. The skaters, though, Tkachuk, 74 points, 30 goals, 44 assists. Again, dropped 30 goals, the bigger difference there. The goal scorer had 163 hits, 49 giveaways, 38 takeaways, 12 block shots. We didn't take a look at the defensive stats for Huberdeau here. Kind of interested to see how he did. Again, not as physical of a player. 45 giveaways, 39 takeaways, only 46 hits, 10 blocks. Not a well. Look at Reinhardt, 129 takeaways. Alexander Barkov had 131. These guys playing defense at a big part. That's ridiculous. Look at that ratio. Ratioed them. Let's take a look at the standings here. Again, Florida, second place, 105 points, just behind Boston. Tough draw in the first round, and the Tampa Bay Lightning. We switch it on over to the Pacific. Calgary is the worst team in the division. Dead last place. They bring Tkachuk back. It wasn't the answer. Calgary's got other problems, apparently. Tkachuk wasn't a fit there. It actually made him worse. We'll see how Florida does in the playoffs. So we'll see if this team can run through the playoffs or if they're going to, fall apart early. Again, we talked about it. They lost that physical style of play. Will that matter in this game? We'll see. Right now, they're taking care of business with the Tampa Bay Lightning. Game 7, they're going to win it. You got the Boston Bruins in the second round here. Winner going to the conference final. Winner probably a favorite to win the Stanley Cup. Here we go. Boston's gone. Florida's going to beat Boston. They're going to go up against the Carolina Hurricanes in the conference finals. They are going to just about get the brooms out. Ducks in the Stanley Cup finals. We're going to have to slow this one down because I did not expect this to happen. Ducks going to win or lose game number 1 to the Florida Panthers in a 2-1 fashion. Florida going to blank the Anaheim Ducks in game 2. They won both games on the road. Or both games at home. Game 3, they're going to win 2. Florida might get the broom out. Bob's going to get hot again or something's going on here. What about these Florida Panthers? It didn't matter who they had. They were Stanley Cup bound this season. It's over. Oh, is it over? Thank you for playing Anaheim. A 6-0 spanking in game 4. The brooms were out. Anaheim was never a competition. They weren't even in the same arena as the Florida Panthers were in that series, and Florida's going to win a Stanley Cup. So, hey, according to EA, that trade seemed great. It looked like Tkachuk was helping him out, but you switch these roles back. Calgary fell apart. You bring back a couple of familiar faces with Florida there, and all of a sudden, it was impressive. I want to see how this team looked in the playoffs. Let's take a look at the playoff stats. Can we look at the playoff stats? What are those? Playoff stats? Never heard of them. Okay, don't worry about it. You know what? Can we look at them from here, actually? I was really interested in the goaltending play, honestly. Season stats, playoff stats. Yeah, we can. That's great. 24 points in 22 games, though. That is what you wanted, right? Huberdeau killing it in the playoffs. The man that was traded away. As far as the goaltending was concerned, what I was interested in was a Bobrovsky that carried this team to the promised land. Spencer Knight had some solid performances possibly as well. Looking at the postseason, Bob went 10 games. No, did he not play? 10 games, 9-10. That's not right. I don't think it's saved. You know what? Or did Spencer Knight play him on a play? Spencer Knight could have played every game in the playoffs. 2020, he did. He played 31 games, 907. They went with Spencer Knight. An interesting strategy there. Nonetheless, that is going to wrap things up for this video. If you guys enjoyed the video, I'd consider you liking, subscribing. You never have to. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you next time.